Hello everybody, it's me, Miss Murphy. I hope you can recognize me without the mask on. I am here right now with Gami. She is my grandmother and my dog, Dixie. Now I understand some of you are not able to visit your grandparents right now, and I understand that's really hard, and I'm sure you really miss them. But right now, we are going to have a special little one-on-one time with Gami, and she's going to read you guys a story just for you. All right, Gami, you go ahead, take it away.
And this is called I'll Always Love You. One morning, Alex woke up early and ran downstairs to the kitchen. "I'll make Mom some toast and honey for breakfast," he said. "She'll like that." Alex reached for the honey bowl. He reached for the honey bowl and crash! His mom's favorite bowl was now 9 pieces of sticky china. Alex hadn't meant to break it. What would she say? Alex's mom was doing her morning exercises. "Hello, Alex," she said. "Did I hear something break?" "Mom, will you only love me if I'm good?" said Alex. "I'll always love you," said his mom, and she smiled. "Even when I've done something that isn't good?" asked Alex. "I'll still love you," said his mom. "Honest, I will." "What if I have a pillow fight with Joey Bear and all the feathers burst out? Will you still love me?" "I'll always love you, though you must pick up all the feathers." And so here he is picking up the feathers with the vacuum. "What if I spill my new paints on Baby Pog and she turns green, red, and blue? Will you still love me?" "I'll always love you, though you will have to give her a bath." So they're giving her a bath. And then on the next page, if I can get it open for you. "What if I forget to close the fridge door and Baby Pog pulls everything out? Will you still love me?" "I'll always love you. There won't be any food, though there won't be any food for dinner." And so they didn't have much for dinner because Pog pulled all the stuff out. "What if I pour Grandma Bear's lumpy oatmeal all over my head? Will you still love me?" "I'll always love you, though you have to eat another bowl of oatmeal. Now, why are you being such a silly bear this morning?" For a few moments, Alex didn't say anything. Then he whispered, "What if I break your favorite honey bowl? Will you still love me?" "You know I'll always love you," said his mom. "Come on, Alex, it must be time for breakfast." And off they went into the kitchen. "Oh no," cried his mom when she saw the 9 pieces of sticky china. "That was my favorite bowl, Alex." "Sorry," said Alex. 2 tears ran down his face. "You said you'd still love me." "I love you." "Of course I love you," said Alex's mom, hugging him. "Hey, I've got an idea," shouted Alex, wriggling from her arms. "What is it?" she asked. "It's a surprise," Alex said, and he ran off to his bedroom. He looked in his toy box. He looked in his closet. And he looked under the table. And he at last found what he wanted. He got out his new paints, poured some water into a jelly jar, and swirled his paintbrush around. And a little later, Alex came downstairs again. "Here you are, Mom," he said, "but be careful, the paint's still wet." "I'll be very careful," said his mom, smiling, "because this is going to be my new favorite honey bowl." And that is the end of that.
All right, thank you, Gami. And I think we have one more story as a little extra treat for you guys.
And this is the tale of Peter Rabbit. I'm sure you all heard of Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit, "one morning you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. Gregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now, run along and don't get into mischief. I'm going out."
Make sure they can see the pictures, Gami.
They're going out. And then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First, he ate some lettuce and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes, and then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. And there he is looking for parsley. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? And Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages. But he jumped up and he ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages and the other shoe among the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have got away altogether if he had not unfortunately run into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. And see, he's trying to get out of the net here. Look. There you are. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve, which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter. And here he is. He's going to get him with that. But Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him, and rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter squeezed Curdy-Shoe. Mr. McGregor was after him in no time and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The windows was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter, and so he went back to work. So Peter had jumped out of the window there, and Mr. McGregor was not going to go with him because he couldn't squeeze through. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright. He had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp from sitting in that can. After a time, he began to wonder about going lippity-lippity, not very fast, looking all around. And here he is. Here is Peter in the garden. And on the next page, we have Peter has found a door in a wall, but it was locked. And there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, and now and then the tip of her tail would twitch as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, like Benjamin Bunny. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard a noise of a hoe. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes, but presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go along a straight walk behind some black currant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside of the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoon to be taken at bedtime, but Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. The end.
Oh, thank you so very much, Gami. And I would like to hear all of you give Gami a great big thank you. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, that's much better.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. It was so very nice of you to lend your voice and your storytelling skills. And I guess that's about it.
Love you all. Bye-bye.
Mwah.